Right. Evening, everyone. As I just said, our very, very last lecture. It's hard to believe that we've got here. I will see you in second semester for COMI. It's the innovation one. I don't know what it's, management of innovation or something. So yeah, I definitely will see you next semester as well. And then to also just say the same rules apply, guys. I will be lecturing at Westville. I'll lecture sustainability. So the same process that we've discussed in terms of the other stuff will happen with sustainability as well. Right. So let's have a glance at leadership development. And it goes back to one of our earlier questions, whether leaders are made or whether they're born. And I think at that point we spoke about it being a combination. So in terms of leadership development, I think one of the things that often we see in organizations is some form of succession planning. And often that succession plan is there to secure the future of the organization, to sustain the direction of the organization. And it's also an indication of when this person leaves, who will take their place. Can I see, is anyone here part of a succession plan? Anyone's company have succession plans? Sheila, tell me about your succession plan.
Hi, Doc. Yes, so
Hi.
that's evening. Hope you're well.
Yeah, we're good, man.
It's good. Yeah, so that's part of why I'm doing my studies as well. So, it's kind of like a 3-year plan to
Okay.
succeed into a more senior role. I work in the communication industry, so different things happening. There's mentoring, there's coaching, there's the studies, like the actual completing my honors. And they're just different courses. That's why I did the UCT course as well, upskilling in different areas and different methods.
That's very cool. And I'm glad to hear that companies are still doing that. Because a lot of companies don't have succession plans. Can I see, as an aside, whose company doesn't have a succession plan? Because if you have that, go for it, Nadia. Nadia, we can't hear you.
I'm so sorry. No, I realized my mic's been on the whole time. I didn't mean to speak. I thought it was muted. It's not. No, no, no.
Okay. I would make a joke about Tourette's, but I won't tonight. Okay, so in terms of leadership development, and to Sheila, the stuff that you're going through is 100% leadership development. It's almost ensuring that we have the right leaders with the right skills, the right competencies, with the right values, with the right mindset somewhere in the future. And it is about the continuity of the organization. There are times where we bring in fresh blood when an organization gone sideways, but generally organizations that are on track, that are achieving strategic successes, will have some form of leadership development process. So I think we always have to remember that every organization would have different expectations from a leader. And it's quite interesting when we do a course like this, because we tend to have a generic approach in leadership, although I think we personalize a lot of the stuff that we do. I think the key thing is about the required competencies, values, and mindset. And when we see that in action, we see how leaders essentially can step up to the plate when other leaders leave. But it's within the context of the organization. So you get molded to think and behave in a certain way, in particular when an organization's on a proper strategic track. And then if we look at leader development, the first bit was leadership. So that is the entire group of leaders. Leader development is the individual person. It is what an individual needs. So often it goes hand in hand with some sort of competency assessment. Often it will go hand in hand with some sort of skills assessment, where you're strong, where you're not strong, what your weaknesses are, where your strengths are, and it's building in terms of those weaknesses and strengths. So it's about individual skills, but it also is about those attributes, and those attributes are obviously bigger than the skill set. It is about mindsets. It's about the values to display. In terms of leadership development, when we look at leadership development, and Tashila's yours is such a wonderful example of this, because the kind of things we look at, and this we get from this kind of course, cognitive development, the sort of theory, the best practices, understanding how those best practices may be applied within the context of an organization. But we also know that the higher you go in an organization, the more importantly, interpersonal skills become. And I know that there's a model that disagrees with me, but I think the truth is you get work done through other people the higher you go, and interpersonal skills are essential. And then other bits and pieces. I think it is about rewarding people for getting additional skills, but it's also as part of appraisal system, seeing how managers are assisting their followers in moving forward, in acquiring the skills. It is a comprehensive concept. Every one of the HR processes generally would form part of it. So it's from compensation to your performance appraisal, performance management process, but also further in terms of your promotion and your recruitment and your selection activities as well. So when we look at leadership development program, it takes that individual bit, the individual skills and attributes, and we look at those within the context of the broader organization. The kinds of things, as I've already said, starts with an organizational needs analysis. And these are essential because you need to look 5 years into the future. You need to look 2 years into the future. You need to ask yourself, what will this organization look like? How is this organization going to change? And what skills do we need in place to make sure that when we get to that future, we have the right people? And you can see other bits and pieces. You have to look at your leadership talent. And when we think of South Africa, in particular with the brain drain that we've witnessed in South Africa, we have a crisis of leadership. I think we have realized that there is a significant shortage of leaders and people in leadership who can step into certain positions. I mean, I'm going to pick on the DA, but when the DA came into power, Steenhuisen surrounded himself with people who don't have formal qualifications, who don't necessarily have the skills, but obviously talk the language. And I think it's because there is this dearth of leadership. I think leaders are leaving the country, and to try and build it takes a long process, a long time. And this gap analysis is always going to be what we require and what we have. And process that obviously fills it would be the development program. And then individual, how's it, Georgia? How are you? And then individual development planning. This is where we put together the building blocks in terms of how we will turn you into the leader that is somewhere down the line. Fantastic, Georgia. And it's ongoing. I think there is a constant feedback loop in terms of this process. So in terms of leadership development, I think it also comes to the new definition of strategic success, the idea of wealth creation for stakeholders, because we realize that organizations have to think broader than themselves. They have to impact society. The expectations from organizations are that we make you so wealthy, you have to give something back. And I think it's this knowledge that we build about society, about the world, about the organization, and the place of the organization in the world that becomes absolutely essential. Guys, we also see there that it's this idea of creating an understanding of what to do with leadership, but also what leadership is. Tashila, tell me, how has your view of leadership changed since going on to this program?
I think, Doc, actually my view of leadership has changed since I've been having these classes.
Oh, okay.
I think that you've literally just opened my mind as to the difference between a manager and a leader, and why it's imperative to lean towards being a leader. So not so much the program, but actually these classes that we've been having, I constantly speak about it with my colleagues as well in my
Oh, that's
workspace.
wonderful, man.
So
That's
yeah,
wonderful.
kudos to you, Doc.
Thank you. That's 25% extra in the exam. Anyone else's mind about leadership change in the last couple of weeks, months? Anyone had a new look at leadership since we've started? Go, Neil, tell us what it is.
Doc, is being observant around the type of leadership one doesn't want to gravitate towards. And
Yeah.
I've used the uncertainty of Donald Trump this entire year. You think it can't get worse, and it does, so there's a lot you can learn from a good leader, but there's also lots you can learn from a bad leader around what you don't potentially want to end up being or aspiring to be.
Can I also tell you that rule applies with parenting as well? I think you can learn so much from good parents, but you can also learn a lot from bad parents. I don't know if that's a fair comment, but I think you're 100% right. We look at some of the leaders, and Donald Trump, who is, I mean, he's a narcissist. He is a sycophant. He is, to me, just the definition of inconsistency and inauthenticity. He accepts a jet from one of the Arab nations. Prior to getting elected, he chastised Biden at the Biden administration for accepting 20 million from these people that treat people and women so badly. From the same group of individuals, he now wants to accept a gift of, I don't know, 100 million. I don't know how much the jet is. That kind of inconsistency is disturbing, but also the fact that he is so powerful and has such, in his mind, a massive role to play in the world. It also just indicates that the world has gone insane. So, excuse me. So the ways we transfer leadership skills, the first one, action learning. I think action learning is the idea of stepping away from theory and of what observing role models, practicing, getting feedback, learning, and creating a leadership style that makes sense to you and the organization. But it's not a theory thing. It is a theory in action with feedback thing. I always am concerned. It took me, I don't know, to get to my 50s before I met the first person who I admired as a leader. And it is an indication of how much there's a dearth of leadership. I mean, to be 50 and to finally work with somebody who you consider a leader is possibly an indication of maybe my background also, in terms of where I've been. But there are so few really good leaders. The second one, in terms of action learning, so it generally starts with dealing with a particular problem, and then it begins in this team finding solutions, and then it's practicing those solutions. And there's a lot of reflection in terms of this kind of stuff, guys. Practicing the solutions, but constantly reflecting, taking time away, thinking about what's worked, what's not worked, and it's constantly trying to improve. I always just think that there has to be some sort of coach, because you need that kind of, coordinating function. Can I just see whose organization does that kind of reflection every year, some sort of reflexive exercise? I know that with our supervisors, we did that once a year to think what worked, what didn't work, what can we change. Any other organizations do that? Some sort of reflection exercise to look back at the year, to find out what worked, didn't work, what we can change, what we should keep, what we should destroy. Nadia, where do you guys do that?
So at my work, I don't know if it's the same, but they have what they call a sales stand-up, where they have with the junior sales staff, the manager, we all just sit together in the group, and the manager kind of just says, oh, based on last week, just pay a bit more attention to it, to this, that this week. And then on Fridays, the whole company, but it's a small company I work for, we're only 50 staff members. The CEO, everybody usually sits together and just kind of look at the past months, like data to see how are the sales going, what are the trends in the different regions and countries. And based on that, we kind of create a plan for the next week or like the next month. I don't know if that is the same.
No,
I'm
it
very
is the
new to this.
same. It
Okay.
is the same. You have to every now and then just sit and look back. And it generally a simple question. What worked? And the other question, what didn't work? What do we keep? What do we change? It
What's
really is
so
important. Yeah, go for it,
what's
Nadia.
so interesting is like, because I'm I'm basically a cold caller, but I tell everybody my official title is a business development associate. That sounds a lot better than a cold caller. But the CEO said, oh, in certain countries they started to pick up some people, um, the sales don't go as well if you use certain terminology that they picked up on. Like they said, oh, be careful of calling a meeting like a placeholder because sure, so it's difficult getting people to come in for like meetings because we try and get people to come in for like a free meeting of our product. So a lot of people tend to say, oh no, this meeting's just a placeholder. And then we end up harassing the person saying, yes, don't forget about the meeting. No, 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 no. And then the CEO said, he actually saw in Australia, for instance, when you speak of a placeholder meeting, clients don't pitch for the meeting at all. So he said, for instance, avoid using that word when
So
speaking to
what is the
potential Australian
alternative word?
clients. Demonstration or demo.
Demo. Okay.
Yeah.
Ah, that's cool. But I think that is what reflection does. I really think it is what happens in terms of reflection. Okay, guys, other bits and pieces. What is the difference between a coach and a mentor? Who wants to answer that? Oh, very cool, Ethan. Very, very cool. Go for it, Neil.
Doc, my understanding is coach will kind of guide you through things, but not necessarily give you the answer. A mentor is kind of someone that's gone down the path that you wish to follow. So someone that can give you subjective examples because they come with the experience of having done the job that you're aspiring to do or the process. But the coach might not necessarily have the relevant skills or development. They just kind of bounce your questions off with additional questions. Like they won't tell you what's right and what's wrong. They'll probe and try and get you to see the bigger picture.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
quite like that answer. Well, I think that's a good answer. For me, the biggest difference is the role of a mentor is to also plug you into his or her network. So coaching is really about guiding. It's about showing the ropes. But mentorship is a far bigger picture where somebody essentially steps in and looks after your career for an extended period, including creating opportunities for you to plug into their network. So people often talk about mentorship programs when they mean coaching, and it really is about guidance and showing the ropes, where mentors really take it a step further. And there's a wonderful example of the differences there. But generally, when people say mentoring, this is what they believe. But the truth is, mentors is a lot bigger. It is about your career. It's about reflecting. It's about making sure that you essentially create an individual that can take your place if need be. Oh, wonderful, Sheila. 100% right there. 100% right there. And then just a mentor, you can see far more experienced. This is the idea of a long-term relationship. It's about the idea of career promotion, but also psychosocial support. It is this kind of relationship that happens where somebody looks after your interest, where somebody is there to promote you, your career, to get you to understand what is needed to get ahead in the organization, what to avoid, but it is a long-term relationship. Guys, and then Kolb, yeah, it's the idea of experiential learning. Very good. So it really is about taking that kind of experience, turning it into knowledge. You guys would have discussed tacit knowledge at some point. So in terms of the experience, so we talk about a concrete experience. So generally, you would observe a role model, you would listen to suggestions, etc. You would be given a description of what might happen, what might not happen. But it is to get a sense of the experience. But the key thing is the second one, is the reflective observation, where you sit back and you ask yourself the same questions. What worked? What didn't work? What can I do to improve? And then you create concepts to turn your experience into something that you have as a tangible hook. And you almost want to argue that you're writing yourself a standard operating procedure. Now, I know it's a lot more complex than that. And then it's active experimentation. And the key term, so what? What can I do? What do I need to do more? This is what I achieved. So what? And it really is this constant process of reflecting and learning and changing and updating. And then, guys, just reflection. Yeah, we've spoken about this. I think it's this idea of taking a step back and just looking at yourself. The key thing is this here. So authenticity is important, self-awareness is important, and that self-awareness is everything from what worked and what didn't work to what my strengths are and what my weaknesses are. And again, you can always see what you've learned from every experience. Who is very aware of what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are? Who has done a SWOT analysis, but in particular, the S&W on their life? Nadia, you've done that? Anyone else? If you ever want to spend 15 minutes by yourself, just looking at yourself, and I know that you guys know what a SWOT analysis is, but do a SWOT analysis on yourself. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What opportunities are there? What threats are there? And if you take that approach to your career, it's astonishing what you can learn from it. It is a heck of an interest. Okay, very, very cool, Tashila. Go for it, Nadia. Very cool.
A few weeks ago, we did this workshop at my office where one of the HR manager led it, where it was kind of like a workshop on personal brand. And I first thought, oh gosh, ew, this is going to be like a marketing thing on how to market yourself and sell yourself. But it was actually such an interesting workshop where she said, you need to try and focus on figuring out what don't you know about yourself that other people know about you, and what you don't know about yourself, and what others don't know about yourself, because that's apparently where your greatest potential lies. And she says the way to get that is through feedback, even though everybody always shies away from feedback. She says that's how you can kind of reach your potential. And it was also a very interesting workshop on the different communication styles, but not necessarily for how to communicate with clients. It was actually a workshop based on how to communicate better with your colleagues, which was really, really nice.
Very, very cool. It sounds a bit like this thing. I don't know if it's 100% the same thing. Have a quick glance at this. I don't
It's
know if I'm
exactly
doing.
this, the Johari window, yes.
Okay, yeah. No problem, Kesh. No problem whatsoever. Okay, yeah, Maya Briggs is very, very good. I think you guys have seen the Johari window. It's a very interesting exercise. The problem with the Johari window is that unless you are ready to hear things you might not want to hear about yourself, and obviously there are rules, Apologies, guys. Please give me a second. Obviously, there are rules in the way that feedback is given. And if it's a wonderfully interesting thing. Who has seen this before? Who has seen the Johari window? Very cool. Yes, Sarah, very, very nice one as well. And another one is Belbin. If you ever get a chance, go be part of the Belbin one, because that looks at team roles, also an important one. It's interesting because it argues that in every person that you have these 4 areas. So known to yourself, known to others. Okay, the hidden area is the stuff that I know about myself, but I'm not prepared to share with others. The blind spot is the one that you get feedback on. And it's interesting how big some people's blind spots are. Yeah, I think my blind spot is fairly big as well. The unknown is this deep, dark secrets that I would imagine live in your unconscious. Um, who would be prepared to get feedback on their blind spot? And we're not going to do that. Who would risk getting feedback on their blind spot? Cream cheese on your chin. Yeah, Monley's so cool. Yeah, I think you need to be open to that. It's a tough exercise. Go for it, Georgia. Georgia Jade, would you listen to your blind spot?
Yeah, Doc, I just wanted to say, lift my hand to say I would. Like, I think I'm too curious not to know.
Yeah, well, I used to lecture at UKZN, and it was part of the curriculum that we did this. And we one day sat, and they had the UKZN group who worked for UKZN had gone through this, and they were saying what they were sharing. And the one that came through incredibly strongly was people who dress inappropriately. Who the, I still remember this term, and I'm sure somebody will explain it. And this woman said, "You're a stutut." What is a stutut? Is it a tractor or something? Who speaks a bit of Zulu? But it essentially was somebody who was massively overweight, who wore too small clothes. And they gave her that feedback in terms of the blind spot. It was an interesting, nasty, apparently consequence. I'm pretty sure my
I'm
blind
laughing,
spot.
but it's. I'm so sorry. I'm laughing, but that's so.
Yeah, but it's also, yeah, I know I'm not going to carry on with examples. I think it's too risky. It's too risky. Yeah. Are moving along. Yeah, and then the reflection. And can you see how often we see the term reflection, guys? That notion of having to take a quiet moment and ask yourself, what did I learn? What's not good? What can I improve? What do I want to keep? What do I want to get rid of? So the other bit that has really come to the fore in the last, I'm now going to say 20 years because it is an older concept, is mindfulness. Anyone know what mindfulness is? Mindfulness is a wonderful, go for it, Nadia.
I think it stems from the Buddha practice where it's almost like a form of meditation, but it's almost just like an attitude or a mind state of just being in the present moment. And what's
That's
so
it.
interesting is they say, for instance, with mindfulness, even when you're experiencing emotions, they say even if you can just acknowledge the emotion, in terms of, oh, like you experience something and you're angry, to be mindful about it, you literally just acknowledge, oh, I am angry right now, and you just leave it at that instead of reacting on that emotion. You just acknowledge it's there, and that's that.
Spot on, spot on. I think we see mindfulness when people do ruminating. Go for it, Neil.
Doc, I hope I don't butcher this. There was a saying, I think it was by Sigmund Freud, who says, and I think it might sum mindfulness up quite nicely, where between action and your response, that's kind of where your power exists. You know, if something has to happen to you, it takes you 2 seconds to respond. But if you are living in the present moment, you have the ability not to react, and that power exists in that millisecond between something happening to you and something reacting to you. Just an example of
It's
if
such a
you,
wonderful, wonderful
yeah,
description, Neil. Yeah, it also has to do with emotional intelligence. So, I mean, you guys have also, yeah, that's exactly it, Tashila. Spot on, Neil. It is that kind of being in the moment. We see people who are not mindful are people who often ruminate. So, ruminating, and I'm pretty sure you guys know what it is. If you have an argument at work, you drive home, you're still having the argument in your head with that person. You get home, you sit in supper, replaying it and re-strategizing, still having that argument in your head. That kind of rumination is really, really bad because you're giving someone free space in your mind and you are not being in the moment. It's that kind of thing. And I have to practice it because I love music and I play music wherever I drive. But I've had moments where a song is played and I'm going, oh, what was that song? And that's the opposite of mindfulness. Who here does ruminate? Will carry on with a flight, will carry on with a fight. Yeah, no, Kira, that's it. No, to be honest with you, I still fly off the handle every so often. I've had to learn, but yeah, you know, you might find this hard to believe, but hierdie Afrikaners sê die meer is kort. Yeah, I can be short-tempered, but I'm trying to moderate that now. That kind of pause between action and thought and action. Anyone here ruminate, will fight a fight, will carry on with something that happened ages ago? You guys are very, very fortunate. Of course, Georgia, most not way too passive. Yeah, it does, Nathan, and it's not, and that's the opposite of and I can tell you now, a lot of people are not being honest here, but it's your favorite pastime. I think it's the opposite of not being in the moment. So it really is just developing new ways of thinking, guys. I think the key thing, it's about openness to information. It is to use the kind of, and I'm going to call it, constructs that live on your brain and challenge those constructs and rewire your brain almost. It makes you think and look at differently at the world. And you always realize that it's about context. And the key in all of this is being in the moment. Well, that's exactly it's and knowing when it presents itself is very important because you can then moderate it. I mean, yeah, go for it, Neil. Neil, go for it.
yeah, sorry, I had to just move a notification from my computer, Doc.
Okay.
Stupid example. Some people might think, but to me, it's quite powerful. Like if I watch my kids, I'll go to my kids' sports. I'm no longer a parent that got his phone out filming it. Put the phone away, and I savor the moment. And my wife will say, like, why didn't you send me a video? And I'm like, I didn't send you a video. Don't expect me to send you one because I'm being present. Like yeah, I'd much rather watch the football match or whatever event it is he's playing in than to record it and never ever watch it again. So
That's a wonderful example. Tashila, you had your hand up. Very, very nice. I think it's about being in the moment. And this one here, when you do mindfulness training, it's Kabat-Zinn. I think it's John Kabat-Zinn. I can't remember the first name. Let me just find it quickly. Kabat-Zinn. I think it's Kabat-Zinn. Yeah, it is John Kabat-Zinn. If you can find some of this stuff to read, guys. It is wonderful, and you don't need to buy anything. You can find it on the internet. It's John Kabat-Zinn. And he has an exercise where he has people, when they do mindfulness training, put a raisin in their mouths. Now, I'm not a big fan of raisins, so it's not really my exercise. But normally when we eat a raisin, it just is gobbled up. And he makes you focus on that raisin and focus on the texture. And it really is about narrowing your focus to a particular thing. It's also about ruminating. I mean, where you concentrate so much on relaxation. And I mean, you get to a point that I honestly thought that I felt the bones in my fingers when I focused on being in that kind of moment. So it is an intuitive response, but it takes a lot of time because, yeah, I think the truth is very few people are mindful, but you can only become mindful when you're aware of the signs. And ruminating, it is sitting at the beach, watching your kids play, not seeing them play, and fighting a battle that you thought you had lost at work. It is a wonderful, wonderful way of being again in the present. So I think it allows you to experience things differently, grape in the mouth. And it is about being in the moment, present in the moment. It is about being where you are. um, if you have kids, this is important because honestly, and one of my colleagues told me this. Now my kids are 18, 28, and or 20, 18, 26, and 28. And it's a saying that they have at their school. And I've always thought this is so valuable. The idea that the days are long and the weeks are short. Now, we never heard that, but it's so true about life. And you often miss so much because you're busy fighting battles in your head. If you ever get a chance to go on mindfulness training, in particular for those people that love fighting battles when they're long over, giving people space in their mind, it is a wonderful, wonderful way of actually dealing with that. Guys, in a mindful organization, mindfulness in an organization has become essential. And I'm so sorry for not having the greatest slides here, but this is a question that I love asking in the exams. I always thought I'd rather give you more information than you need. But when we look at a mindful organization, mindfulness is ideal, in particular in a world where things have gone insane, where we feel that we're rushing from one crisis to the next, where we feel that we're always a step behind, trying to just keep up. It is a powerful, powerful, powerful way of an organization dealing with the kinds of crises that they deal with, but being in the moment, not panicking, not letting emotions run away. So this becomes an organizational process of assessing, reassessing, but being in the moment. Yes, the crisis is going on, but what are the pertinent things that we have to deal with? It is really about learning, it's about sharing, but it is about crisis management, and not crisis management where we have plans and we've got strategies. It's about dealing with crises as and when they happen, and understanding, being able to get rid of symptoms, focusing on causes, and dealing with matters that are important. Yeah, and then mindful engagement, I think it's about cause and effect. It is about looking at your experiences. So again, guys, we look at our own actions, and in an organization, when we did A, B was the result we would have preferred C. So again, a reflection exercise. So we've seen how many times we've had the term reflection. I think not enough people do that. Not enough people do that after an exam. Trust me, when you write your exams, guys, one of the best things you can do after your first exam is take 10 minutes and just reflect. What worked? What didn't work? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? What will I change? 100%, Kesh, 100%. And again, the term reflection is important. Remember, guys, we tend to repeat mistakes because we don't think about what we can do to get rid of those. And again, that term just springing up all the time. And guys, you can see there, it's about a mindset. And as you say, Neil, watching your kids, I mean, paying close attention, living in a moment, challenging your own thought processes, the idea of fighting battles in your head, in particular when you believe you've lost an argument at work. A lot of people will continue fighting that argument in their minds, and they'll strategize and they'll re-strategize. And I think really and truly, there has to be some sort of learning. There has to be some sort of having the ability to essentially enjoy life as it happens. Yeah. Okay. Guys, I went through it fairly quickly. The one thing I'd like to say about this is try and get to a point where you are given the opportunity, or if there is an opportunity to do mindfulness training, it really is a powerful, powerful thing. Any questions, any comments at this stage? So next week and the week after, we'll do our exam prep. Trust me, trust me, trust me, trust me. If you fail using my exam